I've already sent word to all of my department heads. We're watching you. Don't even think about cutting corners or playing favorites or hiring relatives.
You never saw this when Sylvester Turner was in charge at Houston City Hall. A joint press conference with the mayor and the DA announcing public corruption indictments.
The cooperation that we've received from this administration stands in stark contrast to the last 7 years.
Remember when water lines were breaking everywhere all over the city?
7 folks indicted so far in that water line repair scandal. Hundreds of thousands of your tax dollars down the drain. But I'm here to tell you, that water thing, it may just be a trickle compared to the fountain of fraud and political corruption we've now documented over at the Houston Housing Authority.
I could go on and on.
And the mayor knows it, even using that press conference to call out the folks at the Houston Housing Authority. Sure, the board's been shuffled around, but the management, it's still the same.
They were doing projects with people in environmental dangerous locations because people knew people.
This is the epicenter of that widening wound the Turner administration tried so desperately to conceal. 800 Middle Street, a $134 million apartment project being built in the Near East End. Apartments going up a stone's throw from an old Superfund site next door to a lead processing plant. On a third side, pits full of toxic ash left over from decades of burning trash in the old Velasco incinerator.
The passion to help people, to provide housing for people of modest means.
The Housing Authority partnered with Cleveland-based NRP Group on this project, where the culture, they say, is on core values, things like integrity, transparency. It was NRP who provided the land to HHA as part of the deal to develop this place.
We really do appreciate everything that you do. I think you do a great job of trying to, making sure everything is being used properly.
We couldn't pass up the extremely rare chance to hear NRP actually talk to the people who will have to live around 800 Middle, or its future name, the Pointed Bayou Bend.
Why isn't the pollution in and around 800 Middle Street tract being addressed prior to setting residents there?
These folks watch TV.
If our government puts hundreds of families living in this area where we know there are high levels of lead, it's going to be on our radar as the next cancer cluster.
But hey, NRP told us not to worry.
On top of that, we actually just recently did more testing just to dot our I's and cross our T's.
That isn't why more testing is being done on the land around this apartment complex. They had to test. We've got the records. A new investigation by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality started in April. HHA has already been slapped with 4 citations, including 2 major ones, in part for hiding evidence that partner NRP had exposed toxic ash on the site and no one bothered to report it to the TCEQ. Initially, NRP's construction superintendent denied the black material exposed was contaminated ash. A resident sued. An affidavit from an NRP official revealed they had just planned to backfill dirt over the ash. A judge ordered a cleanup, and lab results showed that lead there was at level 6 times higher than allowed. What a shock, with the big lead plant and Superfund site on the other side of the chain link fence. This photo captures the clouds of dust from that ash. And this is where the Turner administration wanted little kids to play? Nearly 300 truckloads of contaminated soil was eventually hauled away, but only because NRP and the Houston Housing Authority got caught. And since then, more ash has been reported on the property you paid for. So why has HUD been so silent? Houston Director Lorraine Walls sent this email a year ago. Frankly, this was a huge surprise. Unfortunately, HHA has not been keeping HUD updated on these matters. But HUD did nothing else, and now we can show you more proof they were lied to. Look at this email from HHA's Jay Mason after that ash was exposed. Quoting, "It was actually the Houston Housing Authority, working with our environmental consultant In Control Technologies, who brought this issue to TCEQ attention. We've got the records." That's outright false. It was Second Ward residents who provided the pictures of the black dirt to state investigators. As far back as 2019, HUD officials were concerned about this project. They even took steps to stop the real estate deal before it happened. But 2 weeks after they stopped it, HUD gave the green light, and we think we know why. We've got text messages showing that then board chair Lorenz Snowden was talking to consultant Lance Gilliam about joining him for a visit that day to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. 2 weeks later, HUD reversed its decision.
Can we ask you about the 800 Middle Street project? Did you help get that approved through HUD?
Let me get back with you on that. I'm not talking about that now, so.
The Congresswoman fought our investigation from the very beginning. We talked to her days before her unfortunate cancer announcement.
How do you feel about moving low-income people near the contamination?
Yeah, I'm eager to talk with you when I'm able to get all the facts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
You don't have all the facts of the 800 Street project?
And now the HUD Office of Inspector General confirms it's investigating what has happened at 800 Middle.
I don't know why they would ever occupy the building because it'll set you up for every lawsuit you can imagine.
The mayor may want to have a chat with the president of the Houston Housing Authority, David Northern. Don't ask me why this guy hasn't been fired.
And I can say one thing, if you see that site, it's a beautiful and amazing site.
What is amazing, Mr. Northern, is the smelly real estate deal that got us here in the first place. The Housing Authority had to replace Clayton Homes, a HUD project damaged in the hurricane. TxDOT wanted to buy the land for the I-45 expansion. It was a huge windfall for affordable housing, $70 million, until it wasn't, after paying down a few million in debt. Instead of using the money for affordable homes, the Houston Housing Authority bought land with every single penny they had gotten, even though there were other apartment projects in the area that would have been a much cheaper alternative. It was land all owned by one real estate developer and his family, Ernie Cockrell. Emails show that now resigned Houston Economic Development Director Andy Icken was involved for years with the Cockrell family. A deal to sell the land earlier to an investor had reportedly fallen through because of contamination on at least part of the site.
I never liked the deal. I don't believe in paying that much money for a tract of land.
That is the voice of Cody Roskelley. He was the vice president of real estate at the Houston Housing Authority while Sylvester Turner was mayor, in charge of securing real estate for affordable housing. But Roskelley says he was curiously kept in the dark about this real estate deal on Middle Street.
I was never ever on a call with the seller or anyone of that nature. I was Lance Gilliam and Lorenz Snowden were the ones that were handling the entire transaction.
Because it looks like you left the agency and then tried to make money off it. Lance Gilliam was the former chairman of the Housing Authority. He teamed up with Leisha Green Ellis, the wife of County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. You know where this is going. We've now found their financial fingerprints over a bunch of affordable housing projects, all during the Turner years. And their pipeline to this guy became crystal clear to us early on.
You talk to her more than I talk to my wife, and I love my wife.
Lorenz Snowden, Turner's handpicked chairman of the Housing Authority, running an agency that Roskelley says allowed political influence to pollute the choices for housing for desperate families.
Why is he so close to Leisha and Lance, and why is he so upset when I'm pointing out the amount of money that Lance is making?
Best we can tell, Gilliam and Ellis made upwards of $6 million in less than 5 years, just from real estate transactions peddled to this one government agency. $650,000 in fees just on this East End land deal alone. The wasted money is just one of the egregious things. Lies were told to protect this real estate deal, and we're going to show you how.
We are a for-profit company. We're a private business. Our whole goal is to do everything. We have to do everything right. If we don't do everything right, our money is on the line.
Not really, because it's a bunch of taxpayer money on the line. Not only did federal taxpayers pay for the dirt, including $13 million for the contaminated land, the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs had to approve financing the building with government bonds, $80 million in public debt. And that's why we had called Cody Roscoe. It was NRP that paid the money for the original application for that government financing, but HHA officials signed the sworn application. Emails show Roskelly resisted signing the document, and very soon after he did, he quit. Take a look at these questions, answered by NRP and the Housing Authority under penalty of perjury. When asked if the site had any undesirable site features, the answer was no, not 500 feet from heavy industry, not near an environmental factor that could adversely affect the health and safety of the residents or make it inappropriate for housing. Wait a minute, there was no mention of the lead product Superfund site that was right next door, the Velasco Incinerator 2. Clear environmental danger on at least 3 sides of the property, and on it, the presence of toxic ash. Filing a false government document, folks, is a crime.
Well, again, we had been told that everything had been cleaned up.
Roskelly says he relied on these 2 guys. One of them, now retired lawyer Larry Nettles from the big firm of Vincent and Elkins.
I can't waive any privilege that belongs to the Housing Authority unless they want to waive a privilege.
But Nettles told us he also had done work for the realty company that sold the land to NRP and the Housing Authority in the first place. Conflict of interest, anyone? And speaking of conflicts, state investigators have now been asked to take a real hard look at what this guy is doing.
I want to talk about 800 Middle.
Michael Marcone, an environmental consultant whose company In Control Technologies told the TCEQ for years there was nothing to see here. All the ash was contained with a clay cap. There were pictures of lush fields, but it simply wasn't true. There are plenty of photos that show a large mound of ash clearly visible to anyone who actually looked. We're told it may have been 25 feet deep, and you can see it eroding into Buffalo Bayou. The TCEQ saw these photos, but Marcone had an explanation. The bad freeze a few years back had unearthed ash that was previously covered. That wasn't true either. We had pictures before that freeze that show the ash clearly visible. Last October, the TDHCA sent this letter to HHA President David Northern, demanding an independent review of the dirt, calling into question the accuracy of the environmental site assessment. HHA and Mayor Turner kept that little secret from you.
Life is not always fair.
But they sure complained privately, and City Hall wasn't demanding answers. They were covering for NRP instead. The mayor's chief of staff, quoting, "If a developer cannot rely on funding commitment made after satisfactorily completing all due diligence, we are on a slippery slope here." During the mayoral campaign last year, Mr. Northern had also sent a letter to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, complaining that critics of the project, raising environmental questions, had created untrue and detrimental narratives. There were, quote, sinister forces at play. Sinister forces? Really? Count me in. And this guy, too. Did they lie to the TCEQ?
Yes, they did.
It was East End real estate developer Alan Atkinson who first notified the Housing Authority Board there was contamination on the property taxpayers were buying. HHA had tried hard to hide the full extent of this real estate deal, and they denied all reports about contamination on the site.
They lied. They lied to HUD.
Atkinson helped reimagine the Near East End. He bought the city's failed El Mercado project at auction decades ago, built a hike and bike trail in what once was an industrial wasteland in the Near East End.
It's very personal because I put my heart and soul into this neighborhood for 27 years.
Atkinson knew the land at 800 Middle was dirty because he used to own it, and he helped expose those false reports to the TCEQ claiming the contamination was contained when it clearly wasn't.
You can look at the pictures and understand immediately he lied for 3 years in a row. Everything colored in orange is severe toxic ash contaminated property on 3 sides of 800 Middle Street. And in fact, the 4th side is also contaminated. That's where the radio tower exists.
We've learned potential residents of 800 Middle Street will also have to worry about tons of steel crashing from the sky into their apartments.
We now know that HHA hired engineers who falsely claimed this radio tower was just 300 feet tall. Did they even look at it? It's 3 times as big. But a new engineer they hired now says if it collapses, don't worry, it will miss the apartment building. We just got a copy of that new tower report. No one talked to the owner of the tower or even went there. They based their work on a 40-year-old study done long before recent tower collapses, even in Texas. It appears the city will simply ignore that even their own estimate of where this tower could collapse includes a new public road built to provide another entrance to 800 Middle. And maybe it's just a big fat coincidence, but the author of this tower report is a company up in Ohio. That's where NRP has its headquarters. We've got no update from the TCEQ on the findings in this ongoing investigation, but how many times does the state of Texas have to get lied to before a real investigation takes place? A full remediation of that entire site. We learned that one of the dirt samples they wanted to test was actually collected before the state investigator even got to the place. That doesn't make sense. And Mr. Marcon, he wants the TCEQ to quickly let bygones be bygones, sending this letter on April 5th. Quoting, due to the time-sensitive nature of the project and the need to provide housing for those people displaced by the relocation of I-45, we want to move this along as fast as possible. Wait a minute. Clayton Home residents were moved into other apartments years ago, and while they will get the first chance to live in this place, so far only a handful say they even want to. And who could blame them? For the next 4 years, the ground around the incinerator just next door to 800 Middle will be stirred up as they try to clean up the mountain of ash. And here's some more breaking news. Suddenly, the Housing Authority is backing away from plans to build more apartments here.
I mean, what we did was we master planned the site, but we never established the total amount of units that we were planning to place there.
That will be news to HUD, who provided the Housing Authority with $54 million tax dollars for what they were told in 2020 would be more than 900 apartments. Think about it. The HUD money, $54 million, $80 million in government bonds, $134 million for fewer than 400 apartments. Do the math. That's $336,000 for each and every one of those apartments. That's outrageous, but I'm not really surprised. At least the mayor has replaced most of the Housing Authority board members who let this happen. Congratulations on trying to clean up what was a corrupt mess. But this cleanup is far from complete. Mr. Northern, he won't talk to us. And when we asked how much you were paying for all this mess to clean up all this ash, you'll love the answer. Quoting, at this time, we don't have a comment or answer to your questions. HUD has been asking the same question. Where's the transparency, Mayor? Where's the accountability? We do know that taxpayers are still paying Mr. Marcon, although HHA won't even tell us how much. That's right, the same guy who provided TCEQ with false reports for years about the condition of that contaminated East End real estate. The same guy who worked for the Cockrell family when they sold the land to NRP and the Housing Authority in the first place. He's still the environmental consultant for the Housing Authority, even after hundreds of truckloads of contaminated ash have been found so far.
I want to talk to you about 800 Middle and those false reports you gave to the TCEQ. Why'd y'all do that? Did someone ask you to do it? You think it's a conflict of interest to represent both?
That's why the Texas Attorney General and the Rangers cannot rely on federal investigators to fix this local fountain of fraud. And you know me, I told the Housing Authority Board just that. The fact that this agency doesn't ban NRP and all the developers who, pardon my French, screwed this place over the last few years is insane to me. If you've ripped off taxpayers, the people that ripped off these people, the lawyers, the engineering firms, the architects who lied, They should be banned. And if they're not, something's wrong. The same fate should fall on HHA officials who signed false documents. It was David Northern, in fact, who formally accepted the $80 million in debt on behalf of you, so NRP can eventually make millions of dollars. Under oath, Northern attests that there was no litigation surrounding the property when he signed the document, when in fact, Sofia Martinez and other neighbors were suing the housing authority over this exact place.
I don't understand why the city is not stopping the construction before they put human beings in this piece of land to live on.
The bond issue is a clear path to involvement by the state of Texas, because the state of Texas was defrauded. And that's why the Attorney General should investigate the fraud that has occurred for these $80 million of tax credit applications that led to the issuance of $80 million of bonds.
There's another reason it's time for the Attorney General to step in. New documents released by the Housing Authority show taxpayers have been systematically cheated by many of the developers that got those huge tax breaks we helped state lawmakers shut down. Some developers never even paid required upfront fees to get that costly sweetheart deal in the first place. The discrepancies we tally may be as much as $70 million. It's testimony to the incompetence and political corruption here. David Northern helped push through many of these tainted real estate deals. End of story.
I felt like I was the only person that had a backbone that was trying to stand up to these guys and preventing bad deal after bad deal. I believe that Lorenz and Leisha and the mayor and Lance and Leisha's husband are all extremely corrupt criminals.
When do the lies stop? The Houston Housing Authority has mortgaged all of our futures with these politically corrupt insider real estate deals. When is someone going to pay the price for this fountain of fraud?